This is Beyond a Reasonable Doubt with your hosts, Mark Garrigus and Gary Smith.
Welcome to Sunday, Super Bowl Sunday, what has become a de facto American holiday. And Gary, I assume, maybe I shouldn't assume, who do you have today?
As hard as it is to root for someone in my team's division, I'm rooting for a friend who is a diehard Chiefs fan.
Well, okay.
I'm not sure that's necessarily how it's going to go, but that's who I'm rooting for.
I like the Chiefs, but I've had a soft spot for the Eagles ever since college. So because I went to college outside of Center City, Philadelphia. So we'll see. And I agree with you. They sure seem to be the better team.
Yeah, we'll see. I'm rooting for a good game. I don't want to blow out.
Yeah. Well, I'm with you. I think we probably should start and end today with Murdaugh. What do you think?
Yeah, I think so. Let's do it.
Okay. What do you want to start with? Do we have any clips, or should we start with an article? What's your pleasure today?
I think we should start with an article, or we can start with some images if you like. I don't know if you've read in the news, but the defense team is spending opulently.
Yeah, and apparently that's a story. Although I saw today, I don't know if it's true, but it would be an interesting story where there might be a little bit of how should we call it, journalistic envy, because apparently the location that Dick has rented for the trial was, I guess, is being reported at $20,000 a week, and some people on Twitter are losing their minds. And I wonder, where would you have him stay? And is there and they were contrasting that with the Hampton Inn.
Yeah.
And when you're as somebody who has traveled the country to try to stay in various places, I've stayed in everywhere from a Marriott to a Hampton Inn, and wonder why it is that that's a story or should be a story, and why is that some kind of an issue.
I really don't get it. I mean, I can understand and appreciate why the prosecution would be staying at some place that is a bit cheaper, given that they are on taxpayer dollars. But I don't see why it's a story that the defense team. And by the way, that the article that we're talking about, where Dick has rented this beautiful Eden at Gracefield, this is a estate that has multiple homes on it. It notes very dismissively, Dick, the defense team and their entourage. It's like, yeah, there's going to be numerous people involved in this. And at some point it becomes more reasonable to just rent some piece of property that's large so that you can keep all of the various people you have coming and going throughout the trial in comfort and, in all one place so you can meet.
And also, there is an argument that can be made that it makes more sense to keep other people from coming in and out.
Exactly.
Confidence information, confidential discussions. And by the way, also the advertised price, even the owner who didn't want to disclose it said, yeah, we give them a break.
Yeah, and because they're staying for a long period of time. So it's like they're reporting this number, and then they've got the owner, without specifying, saying, well, it probably wasn't as high as what you're printing here, but go ahead and print it.
Yeah, it's really clickbait type. A type of a story. It isn't taxpayer money, as you indicated, and I've often said, the prosecutors have basically a blank check. And by the way, if you want to get irate about that, why don't we see some indications or stories about how much the prosecution has spent on this case as opposed to the defense?
Yeah.
Because, by the way, that's public funds, not funds that were generated in the private sector. Plus, by the way, it seems to the very people who were screaming about how much the defense is spending are also the same ones who are talking about the financial motives for the murder. Yeah. So I don't know. You try to reconcile those two thoughts in your head at the same time.
Yeah, it's just it seemed like a silly article to me, but it's out there, and I guess we got to comment.
Well, there are those who were reporting today, and I don't know if it's true, but it's an interesting thought that various media companies were also trying to rent the place and lost out to Dick's. So
yeah,
that would be an interesting fact if it were true.
Yeah, that would be that would be fun to talk about if nothing else.
Exactly.
All right, I believe you teased in the last episode that you wanted to talk a little NFL today.
Yeah, there's a couple of stories out for the NFL. The NFL famously has litigation. I've litigated against them as recently as last year for with the player who we ended up settling on, and we've done famously Collins' case, and I've had many cases in Eric Reed's case, and many cases in between. This week, there's a couple. Friend of mine, Chris Seeger, who is a prominent class action lawyer in New York City and who also spearheaded the concussion case against the NFL, has filed a new case. Do you have the details of that, Gary?
Yeah. So this is a case where he's got a bunch of players, prominent ones, Willis McGahee, names I definitely recognized, who are fighting with the NFL over their access to the disability benefits in a potential, class situation where a lot of players who have suffered issues after leaving the league are not able to get the kind of compensation that they would expect based on the agreement.
Yeah. And what's interesting, if you read behind this, is that apparently, and they're now talking about it in the context of a class, but apparently the individuals or various individuals have gone to federal court because there's federal jurisdiction under the plan, and have been excoriated repeatedly by federal district court judges. And that just apparently does not have much of an impact on the NFL. They just conduct business as usual. I will tell you, having Chris Seeger take a bite out of your ass and start you down the class action road is going to, I think, change that tune.
Yeah, I would think so. And like I said, Willis McGahee, Eric Smith, these are not names no one's heard of. These are some top players, and Jason Alford. And I think that these guys are going to probably lead to more people jumping on, because apparently, there have been thousands of claims and only, a handful under 30 have received top end, payments as the collective bargaining agreement described them. So I think there's definitely some there.
And the second lawsuit, and it comes straight out of L.A., I believe, out of Judge Gutierrez's court, was he had certified a class action against the NFL for Sunday Ticket.
Right.
You have that summary there?
Yeah. So in this one, sorry, my window just froze up. But it's basically a bunch of Sunday Ticket subscribers, which is the famous DirecTV thing, or the DirecTV service that you could buy for several $100s a year, and it would give you access to all of the out-of-market games. That is actually about to move, I believe, from DirecTV to YouTube TV. And
which, by the way, was one of the arguments. One of the arguments for lack of certification is that it's going to be mooted out. The question is going to be mooted out by that move. Right.
And so it's about, fans being able to watch out of market games. And then I believe is there a component here of the blackout for games that are locally available as well?
I think it was in part of the motions. I don't think for determination of the class or definition of the class that comes to play, but maybe it does. I can see the argument for it. That you're buying something and you're not getting everything.
Right. And so basically these people are seeking compensation for what they claim is they're being overcharged. And, it'll be interesting to see, because Sunday Ticket has always been a staple for big NFL fans, and it's only really been available in one place for, it's to my memory, 20 plus years.
Yeah, I think so. I think you're absolutely right. So the NFL, as is always the case, by the way, we could do a whole show on all their litigation nationally. I mean, they're still going strong with Gruden in Vegas, and they've also got the Brian Flores litigation. It's a full-time employment act for many firms that defend the NFL.
Have you seen any meaningful movement in the Gruden case? I just slipped my mind. I
want to say that I read a blurb that there was a stay on proceedings while they appealed the motion to compel arbitration, and so or denying compelling of arbitration. And so I think that's the last thing. So you're probably going to go into the ether for the period of time that it takes to brief the matter and then orally argue it and then issue an opinion.
Fair enough. Well, we'll keep an eye out for that one, because that was one that every one of us was very excited about when it first broke. What do you want to end on here, Mark?
I think if you've got a little bit of one of the videos from Murdaugh of either that, I don't know if I sent it to you, so because I send you so many things, I bombard you. If there is either Mark Tinsley, who's a lawyer who was representing the people in the boat crash, or the housekeeper who was testifying as to the clothes he was wearing on the day of. Either one of those is interesting just because of the way that the snippets have worked and how they play into this. For those who don't know, the prosecution had put a lawyer by the name of Mark Tinsley on. First, I believe they did it outside the presence of the jury, and then the judge ruled that he could bring it in. Interestingly, there was a lot of chatter about the lack of cross-examination of Tinsley, and what his testimony basically was that there was a motion that was going to be heard on June 10th on a motion to compel Alex Murdaugh's finances or financial records. And that became a distinction. Was it a net worth statement saying what he was worth, or was it going to be records that wholly included the checks that have been alleged to have been embezzled and fraudulently negotiated by him? And so the prosecution theory is that this had to occur, the murders had to occur on June 7th because of this impending motion on June 10th, and that by committing the murders, the exposure of the embezzlement would not happen, number one. And number two, the theory was that if you want to go through this, that the lawsuit that Tinsley was bringing against Murdaugh would dissipate. And Tinsley had the thought that he didn't think that case was worth anything after the murders, before he knew that Alec was going to be accused of them. And he used the expression, if you've got Attila the Hun versus a sweet grandma, the jurors are going to go for the sweet grandma. So right. I don't know if you've got it, but you can play it. If you don't have it, then I would just push back a little bit on that. I think Mark acquitted himself well on the stand. I watched it. Yeah. However, I still have the same problem. This idea that, at least to one of these components, the idea that the prosecution is going to argue, if this is what they're going to argue, because this is basically the theme of his testimony, if you're going to argue that he wanted to get rid of the lawsuit, and so therefore he blew his son and his wife's brains out, then you have to get around the fact that Tinsley had offered by his own testimony to settle that for basically a delta of $500,000 on top of the $500,000 of insurance, for a total of $1 million, and a payment plan. Right. And I know people can do irrational things. That does not seem to me to be the thing that's going to trigger an act which is completely out of character. And when I say it, people say, well, he's a thief and he's admitted to this. Right. But that is one of the great things about character evidence and this idea is if you open the door to it, you don't get to just trash somebody. You have to connect what it is and the allegation to the prosecution. And theft does not necessarily mean or equal acts of violence.
So I do not have it ready, and I don't want to try to pull something and play it without having seen it before because I don't want to look like a fool. But I watched the same testimony. I agree with your assessment that he seemed very composed and prepared on the stand, and he was very eloquent. But I also didn't necessarily. I was with you. Also, when it came to the housekeeper, what they were trying to do was, I believe, in part of her testimony, was get the idea going that in the days after the murder, Murdaugh was trying to sync up his stories. I wasn't really buying that the way they were selling it. But we can watch a video of that in future episodes. But I think that this is a good time to plug that this coming week on the Adam and Dr. Drew show, we do some analysis of the Murdaugh trial with Dr. Drew as a substance abuse expert, and I don't think that is to be missed. I would definitely tune in to all three Adam and Dr. Drew shows this week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Mark is co-hosting for Adam, and we cover a range of topics, but Murdaugh is definitely one of them, and I think Drew's analysis is valuable.
It is valuable. I mean, who would you want to talk to about? Because one of the first things I had were questions about, the expense of opioids, and Drew kind of addressed that. And then would an opioid person under the theory? And we showed him some clips, and we got his responses. I thought it was fascinating. In fact, I was teasing him, not so much sarcastically or cynically, but that he could be an expert in this area and might want to explore that as a future career path. I
couldn't agree more. And, you make it sound pretty simple there, but those two questions that you just outlined, we go through 25 minutes of back and forth with Drew of, careful analysis here. Look at this picture. Look at this video. What conclusions do you draw? And I think it's very compelling. So make sure to check those out. Mark, I'm sorry I didn't have those clips ready, but we will have. That's
okay. I'm going to give a little plug today. It's Valentine's Day this week. If you're looking for something, I would suggest Alex and Ani, Alex and Ani, Ani. You can go .com, or there's a number of retail locations, and it's affordable. They've got, I think, a collection that's sold out, the chocolate collection, but go to alexandani.com. You might find something you can use that's affordable for Valentine's Day.
I will do a personal unpaid cosign on that. I have gotten Alex and Ani for various females in my family and in my life, and I have always considered them a winner.
You got it. Thanks,
Mark,
Gary.
Thanks so much for your time.
I'll see you early this week, I think, yes?
Yes, sir. I believe I will see you very early this week. So enjoy your Super Bowl Sunday, and we will talk very soon.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to Beyond a Reasonable Doubt. Stay tuned for more bonus episodes coming soon.